Hello, everyone, and also a special hello to everyone who can't decide if they're one or many or none. I'm Layman Pascal, and this is an old school series that Bruce and I convened to explore the curious dimensions, flavors, and implications of integrative psychology. And when I say old school, I mean it, because today we're joined by a mystic, developmentalist, and gerontologist, Bettina Wichers, to discuss her work exploring the parallels and overlaps between dementia, development, and spiritual awakening, and in general, the degree to which some culturally and medically pathologized features of the elderly brain might actually represent ongoing development beyond the conventional identity of the self. Hi, Bettina. Nice to have you here.
Yeah, hi Layman. Thanks for having me.
Okay, you've been studying the overlap between transpersonal states and stages of consciousness on one hand, and some of the processes we call dementia on the other hand. That's a pretty interesting combination. I'm assuming it comes from your work with the elderly, your study of development, and your own experiences of radically altered states of consciousness. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one step after another. And yeah, dementia found me. And it was not me deciding for that field. It was more the field that decided for that I should be there.
So, what is your definition of dementia, and what do most people not know about the current data on dementia, the current state of the art, so to speak?
Dementia is normally defined as a biomedical state of being or a disease. So I think this is that most people would agree to that it is a disease and with not really known a known causality. So there is we don't know why, but the synapses and the nerves, the brain nerves, um, the cells, sorry, I to adapt a little bit to the English language again, are dissolving, and we don't know why. So there's a huge amount of research about this, why these synapses are dissolving, but there's no really an explanation for that. So most people would agree it's a disease and it's fate. And perhaps we can avoid it when we behave in the right way. But at the end, it's for the most people, yeah, more or less a fate, and they hope, and most people hope, or are really afraid of getting dementia in old age. Yeah, it's a big shadow topic.
What would we what would we look for as signs that would distinguish between a person or a brain that was involved in some natural evolution beyond the conventional self and a person or a brain that was pathologically breaking down and regressing into a pre-personal condition? How much of a difference is there? Is there any way we could tell?
I think, as far as I know, really nobody has looked into this until now. So most people wouldn't put it together, these two very different stages. And even that there are some dementia-like experiences of people who are going through a transformational process, through a dark night of the soul or something. It's mostly not known. So these very high state experiences, these transformational spiritual experiences, mostly are related to some kind of bliss. It's a blissful thing. And after that you are a perfect person and you are enlightened and everything is happy and beautiful. And you don't have to do any shadow work because it's magically all the shadows are dissolving. So sometimes I have the idea when I'm reading, or also some reactions I got onto my process when I describe what happened with me. So it's always thought, yeah, you have done something wrong, because I was not happy, because I had a transformational experience, but I went through years of hell, and I went through dementia-like symptoms. So I got this, yeah, you did something wrong. So people don't get that also in transformational experiences are really, really similar experiences like dementia. aphasia or disorientation, despair, or that. So that is normally or mostly unknown. Yeah.
So it's really hard to tell because some distressing symptoms that look like pathology might be part of the process itself. But I'm curious, when you look at your own experience and you say that you got feedback from people saying, well, maybe you did something wrong or you went through it the wrong way. When you look back at that, how correct were they? Were there other things? Were there forms of support? Were there different kinds of thinking that would have helped you go through it more gracefully and happily? Or is the suffering an inherent part of the process?
I think it was the part of my research process. So for me, obviously, it was necessary because you can't see the parallels to dementia, between dementia and some spiritual transformative experiences on a blissful way. You have to go into the depth of this despair and disorientation. You have to go through that. So for me, I guess there was, perhaps it was a little bit like fate or calling, or I don't know. I had to go through that. But I think, and this is part of my work and why I'm really interested to bring this out in the word, is that if we get an idea about the phenomenology behind this and where I see the parallels, the phenomenology of this, what I call the dissolution of the self, what is happening in dementia and what is happening in this transformational process, then we can find probably, not therapies, it's the wrong word, it's not about therapy. I would say consciousness work, that there could be first information that people are aware when they're getting in this, in the first, when they're having the first experiences of this dissolution. And I think it's, in most people, it's gradually, it's happening perhaps in their 50s or 60s. It starts that something is dissolving and they don't understand what is happening and they don't know that it could be an expression of a consciousness transformation. And so we need first information about that perhaps this dissolution of the self is part of the aging process. And then helping people not to go back into this, what I call the pre-personal, when we see the personal, fully functioning person, like how Carl Rogers said it, as at the starting point of this development. And some people are going, or most people are obviously going into the pre-personal, into the regression. And having information about that, this perhaps that there is something that we call transpersonal, and that this is probably a kind of evolutionary potential of aging, as I see it. And having this information, and then, I think we need some work to do. There's a lot of work to do in this aging process, and there we find enough methods and guidance in the spiritual or in the just the spiritual traditions or in consciousness research. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying that as the process begins to unfold in someone, that it's like being at a crossroads, or they have some flexibility about whether it becomes pre-personal or transpersonal, and that having the right mindset, the right support, the right context might help them be able to work with the process to steer toward the transpersonal outcomes.
Yeah. I guess that, or as far I've started interviews with relatives of people with dementia, most people who are passed until now, and when we go into their story or in their life story, 20-30 years before they got this clinical, or they went into this clinical state of dementia, we really found expressions of these people who give some insight in that what was going on in them, there's no self, there is no I any longer, or I don't know who I am any longer. When they were 50 and 60, and there was a big despair, but it was not, nobody reacted onto that and said, hey, then let's talk about, or let's see if you get therapy. It was and then a lot of shame come out of this, and people went into depression or in suicidal attempts and so on. So there was this spiral going down more and more and more, because nobody saw this in the 50s or 60s of this person, that I was starting something that probably later would result into dementia.
The shame element is very interesting,
Yeah.
right? That people would go through this, and because they don't have another idea, they just
Yeah.
experience it as I'm now failing to be a person. I'm failing to be an agent of the economy. I'm not able to do any of the things that we're told we should do or that we've prided ourselves on, so
Yeah.
that they might. It's very hard for them to make sense of that experience if it seems like it's a failure to be a real participant in society anymore.
Yeah, I think this is most of the part, or not most, but is a big part. Being not functional again, being no fully functioning person any longer, and at the same time, the stigma in being more and more disoriented, losing more and more the contact to their own identity. And because, of course, this sounds always weird. I don't know who I am any longer. We don't have a culture that says, okay, that's a good thing. Let's start there and look where it goes. And so I think all these aspects that come with this transformation are stigmatized in Western culture, at least in Western culture. Yeah.
Well, when you talk about the dissolution of the self, what are the characteristics of that self? What is being dissolved? What does it do? What is that thing that we're letting go of?
I think there are different dimensions, and I'm not finished. It's really this. I'm speaking not out of the blue, but it's not scientific proof to what I'm talking now about. For me, it's this. When I'm in silence, and when I look inside of me, there is no story any longer. The story is here. I know the story, so it's not that I don't know who I am any longer. But inside, there's not so easily not a story with which I can connect so easily. So I really have to think about who I am and what I'm here for. And I recognize this also in this. I was a clinical supervisor in geropsychiatric nursing homes. So I worked with a lot of people with dementia, and I recognize similarities to that in a lot of people with dementia. Sentences like, when we it's a technique when you talk with people with dementia, it's called a validation. So you say to them, Anton Smith or something, just to validate that this is the person, and they're saying, I don't know much about that any longer. So they really are not in contact with their story and with their name any longer. And I experienced that also. So this is part of that, what is dissolving. So it's the story. And it's also part of this, really, that there is no I. For me, it was really when I tried to explain this, it is this, but not I. And this is it's a huge difference. So, and when I try to express it in the wrong context, people think I'm psychotic or something like that. So there are a lot of, or depersonalization disorder was also a diagnosis I often got. So, and yeah, I was aware about what happened with me, and even then it was difficult, but when you don't have any idea. But yet, I'm not sure if I answered your question precisely enough.
It's okay. One of the things that stands out to me, and I've had a variety of different kinds of experiences where some of them seemed wonderful, and I couldn't find myself and I couldn't find my identity, and I had trouble accessing my narrative memory. Yeah. And then I had other experiences like that where it seemed really worrying and problematic. And so both have been very interesting to me. I'm interested in the way other identities become nebulous as well. Like, not just that I can't quite relate to myself as the center of the story anymore. I can maybe find that information, but it's not who I feel like I am.
Yeah.
Also, other identities, so you look at a tree and you're like, is that really a tree? Maybe I don't even know what that is anymore. Do you see that kind of thing, like a
Yeah.
loss of other identities as well?
Yeah, the whole understanding of the word. For me, it was really this nothing exists any longer. So this is really disorienting, even when you know that there are spiritual experiences or descriptions that say it's normal that everything dissolves. So people are really more and more disconnected from the whole word. There are also all the other identities in relationships. This, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a husband. So all this is also dissolving. But yeah, I think it's really in dementia, it's more and more a disconnection from the whole existence. And it's what is happening in dementia is that people are, I think we are normally constructing our identity ourselves every moment again. It's always emerging anew every moment. And normally, or if we look evolutionary onto that, always a more evolutionary refined or more evolved version. And in dementia, it's always with every moment a younger version, an earlier version is reconstructed. So in this, there's also a disconnection with the word, because the word that is there has no relevance for these people any longer.
This isn't really a question, but when I look at it in my mind, I see on the one hand this sort of mystical story, which is that underneath everything has always been nothingness and emptiness.
Yeah.
Right. And that we are in a sort of a temporary illusion on the top, but then that illusion comes apart and we return. But then there's also this evolutionary developmental story, which is that yourself maybe can get bigger and bigger as you go. And that each time it gets bigger, the previous identities seem mysterious to you, seem dissolved, seem like only part of you now. And that, like, so how do we think about this? Is it necessarily nothingness and emptiness, or could it be more self, more of somethingness? But we just don't know what that is yet. We haven't acclimatized to the new, larger self, and so it feels empty because we're not adapted to it yet.
I think this is this transcend, include thing that we have in the developmental stages of stages, Terry or Fallon or Cook-Reuters stage model. There is always a growing, and perhaps at the first moment a disconnection, but then there will be the ability again to include that former self and grow and include that. And I think this is, and as far I am involved in this developmental research, it normally ends with a unity consciousness. So where you are aware that you are everything. So it's and there's no you and there is a you. You are this all and you are the part and you are the whole. So, and you can live with this, and then at the end really living in this non-dual state, being aware of the not two. But I think this needs a really strong mind, a high resilience, a stability somewhere in life to survive these developments with a healthy mind. And I think people with dementia don't have these capacities, abilities. This is one thing. And then there is also another thing that I had to learn. When I went through this process, a lot of people tried to help me and said, yeah, but there's unity consciousness, and so you should be happy because everything is one, and why are you not in peace with all this what is? And I don't know why, but I had this experience of nothingness. And that's not emptiness. It's really nothingness. And nothingness means nothing. And this is, you can't help someone with a description of unity consciousness who had the experience of nothingness. Because and there are some descriptions of this, where Adyashanti describes how people are going through these processes after this experience. And so I think what we need for guiding people in this huge continuum from really fully disoriented to fully aware of everything or of nothing, we need a new diagnostic approach, being aware about the differences of Advaita and Ajata, unity or nothingness, and that emptiness and nothingness could be different experiences. And I have no idea until now what really is going on with people with dementia. So it needs a lot of research in this field.
Yeah, but I think that's what's exciting about what you're doing, is that it's opening a field of study. Like, this is just beginning to be looked at.
Yeah. So I'm really struggling to be concrete at that point, and I don't really, I have ideas about that, but not really data. I think some people of dementia might have had some, Adyashanti calls it glimpses of nothingness, and then you're coming back, you have no idea about what happened, but this glimpse never goes away again. It's never closing. And then you're struggling with that. So this dissolution that happens will be different from that, where people going into this process gradually. When you're always a little bit, you can adapt to that. Yeah. So I think
you
it's
can
really
integrate and assimilate it if you're like taking little tastes along the way, as opposed to it suddenly happens to you and you have no reference for it and you're just thrown into this ocean of nothingness, maybe.
And you said a really important word, because I was struggling last week again in my life, and I'm still struggling. It's now 6 years ago, and I think all this research was what was stabilizing me, because I found sense in that what happening. But I'm really still, last week I was struggling again at the moment, again this, and I made a video for some friends and said, this is how life without any reference point is feeling. And this is the most difficulty in my life, to rebuild something that there's no reference point any longer. And and how can we explain this to people, how to live when even I, who is informed a little bit, is struggling like that?
Mm-hmm. The shifts in our sense of self and our way of making sense of the world, some of them are built in. Like, we see children go through these sort of predictable stages of transformation. But then there's also spirituality, training systems. People undertake practices to try to get into these conditions. And when we're looking at, say, an elder person having these experiences, does it seem to you like it's more sort of just the next natural phase, or is it the result of many little, maybe micro practices they've been doing with their attention all along? They might not even think about it as practice, but is there something they've been doing that's been accumulating into this, or is it just part of nature?
I think a lorry driver who is going through, I don't know, the Canadian forests for hours, or in the Swedish forests for hours, he couldn't avoid to have some glimpses of the absolute, of the nothingness or whatever. So I think a lot of people have that. My colleague and friend Roman Angra always says, when you're working at the office and have all this regular practice that's kind of boring, where you have such, you also come in a kind of trance over doing that. And how do we know if these people don't have sometimes experiences? Yeah. So I think this is part of that. So I think that we have to find a secular explanation for that, and not for me, it was a problem when I was looking for help for myself, that all the spiritual traditions were closed. They all said to me, you have to start with a first basic training. And I thought, I don't have the time. I need help now on a total different level. So we have to look totally different onto that was happening there, and helping and finding secular explanations and pathways for dealing with that. That is one thing. That is this what happened before. And then for aging, and I'm not sure if I understood you right, but it triggered my thinking about what is the evolutionary potential of aging. Because I think this conscious dissolution of the self is the evolutionary potential, not the unconscious, what is happening with dementia, but it's this Rumi quote that's famous: "Die before you die." What does it mean? It's really this personal identity, and later also other parts can die, and you are still in this world and can fully function, and perhaps have much more to give from this transpersonal perspective. So for me, it's this first the conscious dissolution of the self, and then I would go further and really say spiritual awakening is the evolutionary potential or the goal. And I think we have this long lifespan of aging where we don't have the bodily capacities any longer to construct the word with our hands, but we have still this potential to construct the word on the higher levels. And we're not aware, not really, of course, there are traditions that are talking about that. It's not fully new, but again, not on the secular level. It's only discussed in some Buddhist or whatever circles, and being aware or becoming aware this perhaps aging is really this spiritual path for the fully awakening. For me,
it makes me really curious to speculate about what would happen. Right. Let's say genetic science finds some little change and suddenly we all live 300 years. But you're going through this disillusion of self experience, right? Maybe you're 70 or 80 or this thing happens. What happens for the rest of the time, right? Would there be, with an even longer lifespan, would there be subsequent revolutions beyond that one?
Yeah, I think so. I think we are really we're there absolutely at the beginning. We can look a little bit in Rudolf Steiner's theories about what is happening with the physical body when we are really evolving as humanity. Is it really, do we need this physical body any longer? And what is happening then? So I think if I project myself or my thinking into so far, then I really have to let go of our conventional model of humanity and being in this world. So I can project my thinking into this. At the moment we have a maximum lifespan of 122 years. So I can project into that. And but 300, then I have to think about a little bit longer than this this session. But I have an idea, and this is of course also weird. But when I in this last years, I went really through some interesting episodes, and I lived for a while on the Shetland Islands, really it's in the North Atlantic. So I was really retreated, lived in my little van, and tried to understand what was happening. And in this phase, it was really that the idea came up about the rainbow body. That if I could practice, I think I will not finish that, or I can't realize that in my work, but I think there will be some Buddhist monk, and of course, there are some evidence that something like the rainbow body, so that somebody is really dissolving his own bodily existence fully into light in his death. What is when this is how it is meant? So when we are coming out of nothingness, we are calling this DNA and genes and semen and egg, and so but at the end it's nothingness from where we are coming. And what is about the idea that we can, by consciousness development, by really fully embodying the illusionary nature of this existence, that we can dissolve into nothingness at the end.
So one of the interesting things about integral theory is that it sort of respects different lenses, and often it looks at something going, well, what's the first person, the second person, the third person experience of this? And when we talk about nothingness, it's kind of like we're talking about a third person entity. There's something called nothingness, as opposed to doing more of the theistic approach, which is to treat that nothingness as an entity that you could have a discussion with, as if it had some kind of personality, was godlike in some way. Do any of your experiences point toward having a kind of personal relationship with nothingness? Does that even make any sense? Yeah.
If it is it would be a first person approach, not a third person, because it's here as it's this, but it's an N person perspective.
N person.
Or our person, but it's not with it. For me, in my understanding, it's not to construct with this perspectives.
Why do you think it's important to use something like integral methodological pluralism as a lens to study this?
To bridge the gap, I think this is the first. I'm in the preparation of preparing a presentation for a poster presentation for the Science of Consciousness conference in July at the moment, and I really try to thought a lot. How can I present this on the poster? This, and I'm using now the integral methodological pluralism for that. To show how many different data or approaches we have to bring together, because not one approach can alone is helpful for that. And even then, I'm still on the level of rational thinking, not. I can't include something like construct or ego awareness or something with that. I'm sticking here, but it becomes more palpable, visible how complex the research is that is necessary to bring some evidence into this to this research.
Like in a very simple way, it seems like it would make no sense to study this without thinking about the attitudes and the ideas that people have when they encounter these experiences, but also the social context, the shared ideas and what support we have, but also what's actually going on in the brain and the body. And does that make a difference in terms of transpersonal and pre-personal or something like that?
I haven't prepared that for here. Otherwise, I could share. I have some tables where I really show which are the symptoms, like disorientations or aphasia. Aphasia is the right pronunciation. And what does it mean in dementia, and what does it mean in something like spiritual awakening or spiritual transformation, so that we really see the symptoms. And this is only for. This is different when I look into zone 1 in the upper level, upper left, quadrant, or what is it on the physical level, really, and looking at all these symptoms and describe. And then again in this in the upper left. In the lower left quadrant, it's again what is the expectations of society onto dementia, to people with dementia and to people in transformational processes, and bringing all these together. It gives an idea how complex it is.
Um, I don't know if you saw, there was a TED talk that was popular a few years ago with Dr. Jill Taylor, who told the
Mhm,
story about having a stroke in her
mhm,
left hemisphere. And
mhm.
so she just experienced the right hemisphere version of organizing the world. And there was something about that, right? It was fluid and ecstatic and confusing, and she had difficulty with time and identities. Um, do you think that some of this has to do with a readjustment of the relationship between the left and the right sides of the brain?
I'm not good in this theory of the right and the left hemispheres. So I really have to say, no, for me, it's this what I heard from her. It's really that she was thrown out of this existence for a moment. A stroke is that. It's this moment of interruption of everything, in my understanding, but it can't dissolve so easily. And it means really having the half of the experience of this existence after that any longer. But I really struggle with this right and left hemisphere thing because it's hugely questioned in some scientific
Yeah,
context.
it's
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah.
But I think it's really that there can be a shock, and you really have to, yeah. There's only half of the identity is coming back in the first moment, and the other you need time to invite the other perspective onto this word, into this life again, and it's hard work, and she shows this perfectly, the hard work. Yeah.
Have you experienced something like transmission or spiritual presence in people who have dementia? In some of them, have you? Has it seemed like, that we have a certain idea about what it's like to be around a saint or a
Mhm.
sage? Does that sometimes show up in dementia cases for you?
That's interesting. I think because I'm in integral, I think, now for more than 20 years, and my integral dementia concept is also a long time ago, long before I had this experience, and I always thought it should be part of this. How was it called? Integral life practice. We should add caring for a person with dementia as a volunteer into that, because it gives so deep insights in what is happening when the self is dissolving. And I think that with dementia are giving a transmission of unconscious dissolution. And that's also part. I was a trainer in this field and a supervisor for such a long time, and I've stopped doing this work for now. And if I would go back, I really would add this: become aware about this transmission. So I still recommend, if you want to have some transmissions about conscious dissolution, go into the nursing homes, be there as a volunteer, but be aware what is happening. So yes, they have a transmission of the unconscious dissolution of the self, or the unconscious emptiness. And I recognized this unconscious emptiness long ago, before I had this experience. That was something that I was, one day I was sitting with the person with dementia when it was a man, was just, he was. And I had the feeling that there is nothing, no thought and nothing. And from this, there came the idea that if you set a Zen monk and a person with dementia next to each other, that you only see the difference in the posture, but not in the transmission. And today I say, yeah, that's true. They're transmitting the unconscious emptiness.
What did you gain from your hermitage in the Shetland Islands?
That it takes time at the first thing, that it's not fun. It really, if you have such experiences, or this, the transformation that is waiting for us into the aging process is not easy. It's not just fun. So and it needs time to be really fully with oneself and going into this. You need also some contact to the world. um, And I did there this practice that I tried to go into this rainbow body. So I did a lot of research. What does it mean if I go there? But I don't, of course, I have no training in something like that. I have no Buddhist training. Yeah, this was the most important thing, that if you want to experience the depth of this, the possibility that lies into the dissolution of the self, go out of the word as far as possible for a while.
So there's a lot of not necessarily happy and not necessarily fun things to go through, but have you become happier about it over time?
Not really. No, it's really the experience. The experience itself was, of course, it was wow. And when I go back to that, that's still wow. This knowing about that, or that's great. But my life, my existence in this world has really fully dissolved. It was parallel to the Corona situation, so I lost really all my work, and I was not able to. Well, I'm still working on that, building a new identity, existence, and so it's both and. I love to speak about that, and I love to do the research, but it also needs the environment for that, and I wasn't able to build that until now. So it's doing the research is great. It's really big fun for me, but the life around isn't like that. So this is not fun.
It seems like part of identity building is personal and part of it is interpersonal. What's it been like for you to, try to talk about this with people who care for you? Are they concerned? Are they confused? Are you finding ways to have the conversation with people who care about you in a way that can help you stabilize an identity that includes this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's of course if there are people who can relate to that, but there are not a lot. And it's I sometimes ask myself, why does it happen in that time? It happened shortly before this Corona situation, and I don't know how much you were involved. I worked in this field, and so a lot of my relationships have dissolved in that time. So there are not a lot of people around me any longer because dissolution was so massive, and the people who were in contact or could keep the contact who were worried a lot. Yeah, and they were not sure if everything is okay with me. So and this was also the reason why I had a supervisor, a transpersonal psychotherapist, as a supervisor for a while to show some responsibility for myself, especially in the call, and also for the people around me. I think this is really part of what is happening with people with dementia also in the early stage, that if you're having this experience of the dissolution as a continuity, your perspective on yourself and onto the world is changing so radically that it is nearly impossible to keep contact with people who don't have the experience. And yeah, I'm sometimes not sure if I'm getting your questions very well. You have to correct me if I'm always trying to get other parts. So please give me a hint if it.
Okay. If it goes too far astray, I'll let you know.
This is part of the process that there are so many thoughts always, so many paths. that it's really for me difficult to hold a straight line. So I'm recognizing that very often.
Yeah, from very decentered experience, it's hard to know which paths to choose in order to come back to connect with things.
Yeah, yeah. Perhaps this is really this really to become aware that people in spiritual processes or in dementia really are in some kind, no, not in some kind, they are disconnected with the word it was existing for them before. So becoming aware of that is really such a radical change of perspectives. So, but I think you also know that. So from your own experiences. So that would be interesting for me, which is, you said a little bit about where can you relate to that, what I'm talking about?
Yes. And I think I've been fortunate to have had many ins and outs of this experience so that I'm able to hold it relatively stably, and I'm pretty good at talking about it or not talking about it. But I've been lucky, I think, in that. There have also been moments where it seemed like I was able to say no sometimes if it was too strong a version of the experience. And I think that's not everyone has that luxury of being able to draw back when it's too much.
Yeah. Yeah. So you due to your own spiritual practice before, or your knowledge about spirituality and such experiences, was that what helps you, or what was helping you?
It's a combination of things. I mean, some of it is just, the person that I am, how I was raised, all that kind of stuff. A lot of it is spiritual practice, particularly any practices where you direct your attention on purpose. I think that builds up a certain strength. But also, I'm lucky to have some people around me who could listen and support me and things like that. Sometimes, not always.
And I think this is really that. I had the discussion at the beginning several times with Terry O'Fallon. She knew from my research and from my experience very early, and we did some research together until I really said, okay, I'm not able to hold anything longer, so I have to step out of that. And she was the one who encouraged me to continue, especially from this integral perspective. And she said, we are not talking about that enough in the integral field, about this confusion that comes from these experiences, and especially in the integral field, it's often so more rational. And if it comes a little bit, just the tiny idea about irrationality, what is not induced by some substances just out of the blue, then it becomes really difficult for most people to relate to that and really say this, what you're saying. You have people around me and I hadn't. I had to go out and find the few, and that how important that is, and that we have to speak about that, how this network and being aware that spiritual experiences are really not that what most people expecting.
I find that the sort of the immediate context makes a big difference. So when these things have happened and I was already in a spiritual context or doing some practices, then you think, oh, maybe the practice is working. But when it comes upon you suddenly in a different context, then it's extremely disorienting. And you're like, I don't know. Am I having a panic attack? Am I dying? Is this a breakthrough? I don't know. And the inability to do simple functions and the inability to communicate to other people, even if they care about you, what's going on, makes it very difficult.
Yeah. And what made me nervous all the time to be open in the integral field was a lot of that, what was going on in the discussions, especially also in German, this a lot of pathologizing from the beginning. So if someone was not really functioning, it was always, oh, he is whatever, a narcissistic, psychotic, or something like that, and becoming more aware about this, these traps that are included in the integral theory, or not in the theory, it's not included in the theory, but in the way people are communicating about that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a strange thing because there are these options for communication, and sometimes you have experiences and you think, if I said it this way, it would sound very positive, and if I said it this way, it would sound very negative.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily have a preference. I don't necessarily want to use traditional spiritual language and make it sound like it's a very positive thing, because it's a very mysterious thing that we should be investigating, not assuming that we know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I took the chance. I know that in some way, I don't know if I really had a chance to do it in a different way. So it never felt like that when I was aware of this. And I came back from this original experience and I thought I have to think dementia totally new. So it was from the beginning, okay, there's a calling in that. And so this was the reason why I showed up in this huge vulnerability and this huge confusion and that. But it was a risk, and it was really quite a while and didn't talk to anybody, because I thought, when I'm too open now, it's about the psychiatry. So of course it was always running here, and I'm coming from geropsychiatry, so from the field, so I knew how dangerous the situation was in some way. Yeah, so it's also something being aware about that. Yeah. And on the other hand, it's so important that we are able to speak, because it's a side effect of my research, but becoming aware how many people with high spiritual experiences died of a disease of the brain. Bernadette Roberts, she died by ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. I don't know how you pronounce it in English. And Suzanne Segal, she died of brain tumor, and Ram Dass had his strokes, and there are several people I know who were spiritual teachers and went into dementia, but nobody's talking about that. So what is happening?
Yeah, I think a lot about Friedrich Nietzsche, because he had some very extraordinary experiences, but his last couple of years he was, kind of like a vegetable, and they would just bring him out and show him to people, and he was silent and stared off and was in some kind of a void.
Yeah, yeah. And really becoming aware of that is, I sometimes say, awakening is not very healthy. So that we become aware about the trap and the dangerous aspects of these states. And I think, information and talking and being there for each other is one of the most important aspects.
Yeah, if if you're talking to people who have a close relative or someone they care about who's expressing dementia-like symptoms, what would you say to them that they could do to help it go in a more positive direction, to be more supportive to it?
It depends on the stage where the person is in, and of course on this of the stage the relative is. It's never this one, and I have a client, and we at the moment where we had this question: how can I be more helpful for my relative in dementia? And we used a typological model, the gene keys, for going into that and becoming aware about or getting an idea about the divine impulse that is in this person, or is still trying to show up in this person. And we tried to get an idea about that, and then we got an idea that this person is in her unconscious way on this path that was included in her being. It's not the conscious, not the transpersonal, but in her way of being, she's really following the path. So that brought a lot of relief into this, the awareness. This is one thing. So, and another thing is for me always that's another aspect, this paradoxical lucidity. I don't know if you have heard about that. We have this terminal lucidity in cancer patient, that they're becoming very lucid, very clear, often in the last minutes or hours of their life. And we have this also in dementia patients, and it's totally unexplainable because these are people who are haven't talked for years, who are unable to express themselves, only lying in bed, and suddenly they start to talk again and very informed about that what was going on, and they're asking about the people around them, and so it doesn't fit to the biomedical explanation of what is going on in a person with dementia. So, and for me, from my perspective, it is just an explanation about that there's always consciousness. This also is an experience of the absolute or in the absolute. So it's just we forget that, and it shows up in this paradoxical lucidity shortly before this person is dying. And also this helps a lot for people, for relatives who have a spiritual orientation, saying, we don't know why this person decided consciously or unconsciously to go this path, but it is, he or she is still part of this existence, and there's consciousness, or it is in consciousness. So there's no fear about this person really needed. It's just being there for her or him in this last month or years.
Yeah, those are fascinating. I've heard reports of people coming back lucidly for moments, and it really makes you wonder, because it seems like the neurological machinery must actually be functional still. They're just not using it most of the time, right? So that they're like, we might think like, oh, they don't have the capacity to operate anymore.
Yeah.
But then they come back for a moment. You think, oh, that capacity must still be there to some degree. And what they're doing then is something else. It's not just the result of the wires aren't working.
Yeah. Or going really a step further and saying it's not the brain. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, the brain is something that we call the brain as the organ that runs this existence, but probably not. For me, also the brain is just a kind of description of the potential of this human existence. So, and it's always there. And then this existence is making a specific experience. But if this biomedical explanation of the brain is really helpful for us when we go into the further in the higher dimensions of consciousness, I don't think so. I think we will transform that also.
There's a threshold beyond which the brain isn't a very useful explanation.
Yeah.
There's also, I'm curious, I always, when I talk to people who are doing work on the brain, and they're, trying to chart it or have new neurofeedback machines, and what does it look like when you're in this state, that's really exciting research.
Yeah.
But I'm always puzzled because they just put the thing here, and I know that there's brain systems in your chest and brain systems in your gut and in your fingers, and I wonder if anybody who's studying dementia is looking at what's going on in other regions, or are they just looking at what the wiring in the head is doing?
I think there is some research, but I didn't went into that until now. I will have to do it after you ask that. So for me, it's in this research that I'm planning, it's also important to become aware that we are normally looking onto this bodily existence from an evolutionary perspective. So we take it as a given that there is this moment of creation, that there is the fetus and so on, and then there's birth, and then it's unfolding in a magical way. So now this is evolution. So I'm following the Aurobindo's description. but we never look really into the involutionary part of that. So how is this situation of dementia awakening created, and what is coming before? And a lot of, we are only looking at why is this brain, or why are these synapses dissolving, but what is happening before? Why is this this existence is creating itself, but what I said before, on an ongoing lower level, less evolved level. And for me, it's this, when it becomes more clear when we put evolution and involution together into our research approach. And
Is there anyone else studying this, or is it just you?
I haven't found anybody, it's really interesting. There are some, I'm really slow in my going out with this into the world, but sometimes I'm connecting to spiritual leaders in Germany or some professors. And when I wrote them the email, and I have some description of that on my website, and when I link them, it's really mostly they say, oh, when can we talk? So they're really interested in that, but there's no lasting effort, lasting results from the moment, because they recognize that I'm not in the situation at the moment. I don't have the money for starting a big research project or something like that. So it's not the long-lasting effect for me, but people are really interested. Last year I was on the Eurotas transpersonal conference in Oxford, the first time speaking about that. And it was really when people asked me, what are you doing? What kind of research are you doing? I said, I'm doing research about the similarities between dementia and spiritual awakening. And nearly everybody said, wow, that's good. Why? Yeah, of course, it's so obvious. Yeah, so people who have a transpersonal perspective onto the world can easily relate to that. So that makes me, more courageous also being here. And but I don't think that there's anybody who's doing research like that. Yeah, I would love to come in contact with these people.
I'm out of questions. Is there anything else you think we should talk about?
No, I think there are a lot of things going deeper into that, but I think it's for information, it's enough. So,
okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been really nice to talk to you, and I agree. It's a very exciting kind of convergent field that a lot of people who are sensitive to this kind of experience detect as relevant. And so I wish you luck in your work, and I look forward to talking to you again.
I think when I have a little bit more evidence, then I'm coming back. And thank you.
Okay, good. I look forward to it. Thank you.